I've put together this slide deck to support the team at Northeast Metro Connect to understand something of the motivation and the scope, the methods and the outcomes of this piece of research that I'm leading at Northeast Metro Connect. I was prompted to think deeply about AI when I attended Arne's great presentation on the opportunities that AI presents peer workers and the mental health sector a couple of weeks ago. And through the response that it generated in the group and recognizing that people are at such different starting points, I felt that there was an opportunity to explore this a little bit deeper and take time to talk to people about what their hopes and their, concerns and their questions might be around this particular piece of technology and the imminent sort of change that is going to be upon us. We're seeing one of the most rapid types of change in the workforce that we've ever seen through the use of AI. And so finding an opportunity to talk to people, to hear what they think and to hear how that they would like to see that change take place and the sorts of supports and what they see in terms of the opportunities and the caution or the the respect that they think that it would be helpful to keep in sight when navigating this change that includes an entirely different way of understanding things, of communicating, of working and living. Not to mention the aspect that this is going to impact who we are at work and who we are at home and who we are in relationship with other people. So I'm going to just progress and just walk through some of the different aspects of this work to give you a really comprehensive and grounded understanding to support those of you that want to participate or support this activity, or to reflect upon ways of working with people in organisations that is centres the voice of workers and lived experience. So as I mentioned, I feel like this is a really critical time, and I'm really interested in ensuring that the insights that otherwise wouldn't necessarily be shared outside of intimate conversations, that we can sort of come together around, themes that we may have in common, or we might have differences of opinion or differences of experience using AI. So I'm interested in understanding how lived experience, one of the most deeply human profession, one where we are literally using aspects of ourselves that most of the workforce doesn't call for, and AI, which is it can certainly replicate many different professions and skill sets, but it will never have lived experience, which is a really interesting juxtaposition or opportunity for a rich conversation. So I will be using participatory and reflective ways of working, and that means sitting down with people and asking curious questions and seeing where those conversations go, but centered around a set of consistent questions. So I hope that this will help us create a shared language and understanding around AI in work, and potentially beyond that, a tangible deliverable that will showcase our team's insights, values and innovations for those moments when, prior to a pause on activity around AI, people were using this in really interesting and innovative ways at work, and how they might like to use it in the future once that pause on policy or our new policy comes into place. And for those people that have never explored it, maybe hearing the reasons, their own hesitation as well. So I hope that it will create a meaningful contribution to broaden the conversation at Northeast Metro Connect, within Access potentially, and within the broader sector. It really sort of depends on where the research sort of evolves to. So the purpose is to understand how AI has been used or might be used in the context of our team, to explore the risks and how staff has navigated them prior to the pause, and how they might, how they understand best practice of AI in the context of the work that we undertake in our team. Identify opportunities and preferences for future AI integration within different aspects of our day, business as usual and the sorts of activities that we do in a standard workday, and gather insights that may support change initiatives, learning and policy. So there's certainly going to be, for many people, it might be, it might represent a significant shift, this way of working. For others, there might be more of an ease to it, but recognizing that we want to make sure that everybody is supported on the journey around change and what we might consider in that period of time. So the scope of inquiry, I'm looking to first of all connect with the Mental Health and Wellbeing Connect team, specifically the peer workers, then the family clinician. So I'm really sort of focusing in arcs, like working with a particular group of people then, and looking at the program workers, team leaders and other staff who will be using this technology in a little bit of a different way. They'll have different applications. So I'm sort of focusing first of all on those that use it would use it in a more of a aligned or similar way through the sort of standard tasks that we might do in our role. I also have a curiosity around inclusion, connection, productivity, creativity, ethics and risk. So these are some of the questions that are integrated throughout the interview guide. My approach will be a 60-minute interview, thematic analysis and qualitative responses of the qualitative responses. I'm going to generate a summary report, which will basically highlight some quantitative and mostly qualitative feedback and the sort of themes that pop up. An explainer video, because I always feel like it helps to break down complex information, and a playbook, which is something that I hope to explore further with you, which is a way of understanding the idea of practice and how demonstrating some of the actual how versions of how people are innovative in this space with AI, and also use caution and explore. I will be exploring other avenues to share learning and insights as well that may pop up in conversation with the team. So there are always ethical considerations, and it's really important to ensure that this is, this is reflected upon when doing any work like this. So I do have a informal ethics agreement, because I'm not in the context of a university sector, but I certainly have one that outlines all of the risks and the considerations. So participation is optional, non-sensitive, and it's focused on work-related reflections. There are some opportunities to talk about it in the broader world, but that's not the focus of this particular research. Formal consent is sought, so I do have a participant consent form. Participants can opt out at any time, and data and recordings are only used for transcription and thematic analysis. It basically helps me ensure, as per peer work, when I'm able to record, someone sharing their experience, I can fully focus on what they're saying, and make sure that I'm not there scribbling notes. Data is stored securely and not shared outside the project, and insights are shared without names or identifying details. So this, the sorts of things that people share, if they want their, ideas to have an attribution, I can certainly do that, but I'm without formal consent and without returning to this theme, that's not something that I'll be doing. So I'm looking for themes and insights to that I can amplify to a broader, from a broader scale beyond those conversations that I'm having with people in a one-on-one context. So the intended impact is this, doing research is one thing, but I'm working relationally through this. So it's really to create a space for staff to explore, to reflect, to question and learn about AI. So in the context of the one-on-one interviews, obviously that's not going to be in a shared space, but I'm looking to take it beyond that as well by creating the report and to explore this further. But, the feedback that I've had so far is that, asking these curious and reflective questions really does get people to start thinking a little bit about technology in a way that perhaps they don't in a cognizant way, when we're going about our day to day. So I've had some really interesting feedback about that so far as being a particularly helpful set of questions and prompts to get them to consider, why and how they use technology in the way they do. So I'm surfacing a diversity of insights, and from the conversations I've had so far, there is absolutely a really broad range of experience and attitudes towards artificial intelligence. I'll be synthesizing themes to map out what matters most, so that we can really surface some of those larger themes and also understand some of the outliers within that, because they're always important to keep in mind as well. I'm going to be demonstrating a participatory, reflective, and generative way of working, which can be a really helpful means to support the process of change within teams and organizations. So it's that sort of ground up, way of working, and contribute to a pioneering conversation at the intersection of peer work, AI, and mental health, which in fact has very little research or dialogue currently. So the idea of making, generating these sorts of ideas and insights and, practice suggestions is something that's has very little research out there, whether formally or informally. And so, in this era where we're really looking to amplify the voice, in particular of peer workers and the capacity that peer workers to work in a relational way, this is a great way to amplify the diversity of practice and the dynamism of peer workers and other clinical workers as well, and others working in the mental health space. So here, I won't go through all of this, but basically this is a bit of a roadmap that you can spend time looking at in the slide in the PDF. But basically it just maps out how this process works, and in terms of completing the process of from conversation to deliverable. And it really depends on how much time I can dedicate, or I will dedicate in this, as to how long. So I have done quite a bit of work already around, developing the necessary processes, and I've started interviewing, as some of you might know. And then I'd start sort of doing things like compiling the qualitative research and making sense of that, perhaps coming back to some of those conversations, and then I'd be working on some of those, deliverables, the report, an explainer video, and other resources that might pop up. So it's really, there is something that's quite, this is an evolving process, and certainly I'm learning so much already and can see opportunities for potentially, whether further research or resource generation, research development, further conversations, and potential training. So I do have a number of different pieces of documentation which you are welcome to take a look at. With the interview guide, I do not ask all of these questions, but these questions really help to prompt me. There are some standard questions, absolutely, but they help to prompt me to keep me on track. But sometimes I'm certainly interested to hear where the conversation goes, and when people take it in radically and, inspiring and interesting directions, I want to make sure that I capture those sorts of insights as well. So there's the ethics protocol, there's the participants briefing. So that just gives pretty much this conversation is, is captured in that document, the consent form and the interview guide. So I'll leave it there, and if you want, please reach out to me to make time. I'd love to hear more about your thoughts and feelings about this work. I've always been extremely interested in technology and how we can, build a bridge between a fair and equitable and helpful relationship between, humans and technology. And I, after many years of working in a space where I was working in digital inclusion, I recognize that it's so important that we take very deep, very considered steps, particularly around relationships and particularly around connection and communication, to ensure that technology is there to serve us and not alienate us further. So, that's a really strong value that is driving this work, and just to make sure that, nobody's left behind in this process, and that people really feel as if their thoughts around their own humanity, the way that they work, the way that they understand the world, their values and ethics are really, at the center of the conversation. Okay, thank you for your time.